I'll introduce myself. I'm Scott, and I really enjoy bringing forward the shamanic work and different types of cultural messages and cultural traditions to share with everybody. From where I sit, one of the most important things to me is to bring forward shamanic consciousness throughout all humanity, so that we can unify within what we have in common, rather than focus on what we have separate and different from each other. Right. So it doesn't matter whether your tradition comes from Hawaii or New Zealand or Europe or Native American, Indigenous American. We all have the vested interest in stepping into our roles as caretakers and custodians of the web of life. And so it's very important that we embrace that role that we have. And it's important for us to move forward and keep that in mind as we move forward, focusing a little bit more on our commonalities and our common intent, rather than on maybe what makes us different from one another. So that's me. And while we're waiting for Dave and everyone else to join us, why don't we just go around and everybody introduce yourself and just say who you are, where you're from. A lot of people know each other already, but yeah, go ahead. Nareni, why don't you start? You're in the upper left of my screen.
So I am Nareni. I am a New Zealander, but I've actually just relocated back to Sydney. I'm a graduate of Scott's courses, including the professional development course. And one of the things that I've realised over time is that I've been able to see the common threads between the Roman Catholic faith and shamanism, as in offerings and all of that. So that's been really an interesting sort of like learning journey for me. And I'm really keen to sort of get a bit more information from Dave about this drumming and etc. So it's great to be here. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Nareni. Rose, why don't you go ahead?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, hi, everybody. My name is Rosemary. I am one of Scott's students. Basically went through the practitioner training, still not completed it entirely, but I am still planning on it. It's just been a lot going on in my life. Yeah, and I've just really learned a lot, and it's really changed my life completely, like literally changed my life. The location of my life, the way I live my life, every part of my life almost has been changed by this. So I feel like a newbie. I have a full-time career in finance. So this is just a joy to be included in this. I'm just super grateful to be here and learn. So thank you.
Great. Thanks, Rose. Thanks for sharing. James, you want to say hi to us?
Hey, how's it going?
Great. Thanks for joining us.
Good, thank you. My name is James, or Jamie. I go by Jamie. I'm from Michigan, suburbs of Detroit. And this is all really new to me. I started down the meditation path and got into breath work. I'm a musician and was a touring musician for years. So now I've transitioned into sound healing and have crystal healing bowls and gotten certification. Then I discovered the shamanic path, and I've done reading and studying and practicing. And then I just got a drum recently. So this is all sort of evolving. I haven't been through any shamanic classes yet. So this is all very new to me.
Great. Thanks for joining us and sharing about your background. And it's kind of a natural progression from music to sound healing to shamanism. It's yeah, that's great. So thanks, Jamie. Christy?
Hello to you all. Lots of familiar faces. Nice to see you, Rose. I'm in Auckland in New Zealand, and yeah, I've completed my shamanic studies with Scott, and pretty much encompasses most of the work that I do these days in some form. I teach in yoga, but I also do hot stone massage with energy healing and intuitive guidance, which often is the spirit medicines, the spirit animals. And it's really interesting because I was very hesitant to use my drum. And after doing this course, I normally just like use a drumming track, and because then I can just be really focused on what I'm doing. But after the last call about the drumming, I had a session with a client in person because I'd kind of been just doing it at a distance, and used my drum for the first time. And I was like just so blown away how much more powerful it was. It was a completely different space for me, because normally in my journey work, I'm very visual, but in using the drum, it was all just totally like channeling through me, and the words were just coming out. It was a completely different, powerful experience. So yeah, just learning and growing with my drum now, and having more confidence to use that amazingly powerful energy, which does totally put me in a totally different state. So yeah, so it's been exciting. Nice to meet you all.
Thanks, Christy. Thanks for sharing that. And it's good to hear that you're using the drum more now in the sessions. Yeah, that's great. And it does make a difference, I find, rather than using a recording, because on the recorded drumming, it's always one tempo. It's always, it just is what it is, right? Whereas when we're doing drumming live within the session, it becomes more dynamic. And so if we're, going in deep and there's some deep something that needs to be removed, then maybe the drumming gets very, very intense up to that point where it's released, and then it might get calm and quiet again. And so there is a dynamic aspect, just as in any kind of music performance, right? There's a dynamic aspect that occurs in a performance. The drums pick up, it brings up the tempo, and then it maybe comes back down, and it's the same thing in the session work. So as you tune into that more, and as you become more familiar with that idea of drumming for yourself while narrating, while doing a session, which is, it's multitasking. There's a coordination there. And oh, good, Dave's able to get online. He texted me and he said he had some connection issues, but he's joining us now. There is a dynamic aspect which comes in, and it becomes kind of second nature, where the drum begins to play us almost, right? Like I'm playing the drum and the drum is playing me, and there isn't a separation between the two. So that's one of the really huge benefits of self-drumming. Thanks, Christy. Yeah, Dave, hi, glad you could join us. Thank you for persevering with your internet connection.
Yeah. Okay, here I am.
Yeah, great. We're just gonna keep going around for a minute while you're able to get settled, and let Willie, Melanie, and Gabriel introduce themselves, and then we'll let you take it away. So go ahead, Willie.
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me, Scott?
Yes.
Okay, good. Hi, I'm Willie. I'm from Maui, and I'm also a graduate of Scott's shamanic classes that he offered a while back, and I'm still working on my ancestral class. So it'll get there.
Yeah, thanks, Willie. Melanie.
Thank you.
Melanie, say hi to us.
Hi, I'm Melanie from Ventura, California. I've completed the shamanic training as well. And then I'm just kind of trying to figure out what my business is going to look like. I'm doing equine facilitated coaching now as well. So lots of health stuff.
Great. Thanks, Melanie. And Gabriel, would you like to say hi to us?
Sure. I don't know if you can hear me okay. Okay, yeah. There you are. Yeah, I studied shamanism about 30 some years ago for a while. And then, of course, with work and family and things like that, I had left that area of study. I've studied polarity therapy and Reiki and things of that nature as well. But I'm retired now, and right now I'm kind of recovering from a back surgery. So anyway, I'm here though.
Well, I hope you recover from your back surgery quickly.
I will.
And thanks for joining us. I'm glad you have the time now to pursue these other interests.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. And Robert, thanks for joining us. You want to just introduce yourself and say hello?
Yes, thank you. Thanks. I'm just here trying to check things out and see what's going on.
Right on it. And where are you joining us from?
Currently, I'm in the Quinnipiac Valley, in Western Massachusetts.
Great. Well, thanks for taking the time and joining. And okay, so Dave, I'll let you take it ahead, take it over from now. Go ahead and share what you want to share with everybody today. And anybody questions come up, come on in and raise your hand, jump in and ask Dave the questions. So thanks, Dave.
Okay, well, thank you, everybody. Please be patient with me. I have a daughter that just had surgery and she's in tears right now. So it's kind of crazy right now. So I'm not sure what we're going to be like, what we're talking about today. The drums we went over care of and use of the drums before. So this was more on the sacred items.
Yes.
Okay. So like extraction tools, feather wands. So each item is used in a very sacred way, a very special way. These are tools that we use that are very powerful, and they're tools that we need in doing this shamanic work and healing work. First and foremost, the drum connects us, and is probably one of the most useful tools that we have. The drum, and next I would say the rattle that call in our helpers. So in making of the rattles, we use rawhide, same as the drum, and build the form. Can cut the head of the rattle out into just a circle or to shape of an animal, say like a turtle or a bison. Let it dry and then fill it with sand and pebbles. And we use some stones that when we shake it in the dark, the stones hit each other and it creates like a spark. And so they will spark in the dark. And that is calling in our spirit helpers. The next, I think, is very important is the wand or the feather fan. And that is used first for clearing our space using the sacred medicines to hey, just a second, look what the I'm having kind of an issue here. I'm sorry, look what the
Why don't you take a minute with Lakota and I'll talk to everybody so that you can be present with her. Yep, just go ahead and do that. Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to put you on mute, Dave. You'll unmute yourself when you come back. There you go. Okay. Okay, so yeah, Lakota just had surgery the other day, and so I think she's still recovering from that. So just to talk a little bit, Nareni, you had a question about the different rhythms for the drums. So in the shamanic work, usually I'm using a monotonous rhythm to induce a trance, because if I'm drumming while I'm doing session work, unless that rhythm is very much ingrained in me unconsciously, it would distract me to do a specific rhythm, right? So now, on the other hand, if you're a professional drummer and like the clave is in your bones and your blood, there's nothing wrong with emphasizing like like I can do that. That's not a problem for me. It's ingrained in me. I'm not thinking about that at all. And or sometimes I'll be find myself when I'm drumming playing like the 6/8 short bell or the 6/8 long bell, usually the short bell. I'm not trying to do it though. It's just something that comes. So the most important thing is that when you're drumming for session work, it's keeping the energy moving and you're not thinking about it, right? It's not distracting you from your shamanic trance state. You want to make sure that you can stay in non-ordinary reality without thinking about what rhythm is happening. Now, if you've been drumming for a long time and those rhythms happen to come through without thinking about it, or you grew up in a culture where a specific rhythm was played all the time, then, and you just find yourself doing it, that's totally fine, right? Like here in Hawaii, you'll hear boom, boom, ba, boom, boom, ba, boom. You know, that's like one of the classic rhythms. And if you grew up in a hula circle or a halau, you know, or your parents took you to halau all the time, that's ingrained in your subconscious so deeply that you might find yourself playing that. But the general rule is you want to make sure that whatever you do, you're not having to think while you're doing it. Yeah. Yeah, great. Dave, you can go ahead. Just unmute yourself when you're ready.
Okay.
Good.
So any questions about some of these items that I've just, we haven't even gotten to like extraction tools. Any questions so far on any of this from anybody?
Yeah, go ahead.
Hi, Dave. Well, when you brought up about, was it the rattle that actually calls the spirits in? I'm sort of thinking when I do sound work, I use a 10 shaw to start the circle and a 10 shaw to close the circle. And that's about, you know, inviting anyone in that wants to help. Is that fairly similar to what you're doing? Like you're calling them in, then do you have to close it with the same method?
To close the door when we're done? Yes. And to send the spirits back home, the helpers. When you open that door, we have to be very careful that because there are good and there is bad, good and evil. And dark forces can come in. So it's extremely important to protect yourself, protect the person that you're working on, and to open that door and send everybody home when we're done, and then close that door. That's why we stress that this is not something to be played with, because it's important very important to send those spirit helpers home and close the ceremony and then close that door. And that protects us and it protects the patient. That you don't want any lingering spirits hanging out, lingering around. We've asked them to come and help us, and then we graciously thank them, and then we close that door. It's important because a healer can take on the ailments of their patient, and it could make you sick. And I have seen traditional healers where this has happened. And they become sick. And oftentimes, not oftentimes, but there are times when I have done this, and afterward, I go out and I physically get sick. I vomit, and it's expelling, and that is okay. That is not a bad thing. You're purging that out of your body, but that tells you that, you know, this can also take a lot out of you. You'll feel many times very just tired, exhausted afterward. So it's extremely important to take care of yourself before and after doing sessions, because it can make you very tired. and that's normal. So when you're done, take care of yourself. Get some good food, get some good rest, and recharge yourself up. Those of you who have done this know that it can be tiring. You feel like you've just done a marathon, and that's why it does take a lot out of us. Even though we're not asking a spirit to come into our body and take over, we are doing the work with their help. It is tiring. So it's very important to take care of yourself during these times, and especially afterward. And when extracting from a patient, extremely important to dispose of what you have extracted. There are, for example, we'll take eagle bone, and you could, suck out, say, a blood clot, for instance, and you pull that blood clot out of the patient through your mouth. You must spit that out, and then into a glass of water, and then that has to be disposed of properly in a safe way. So every step is about taking care of yourself. And I've known people that have done these things, and they did not maybe dispose of it quickly, and they take that on. So important to do that, to close those doors, dispose of what you pulled out, the negative energy, and then dispose of that, or let it go. We have usually a sacred fire going, the sage is burning, and disposing of that. You don't want that lingering around. It's like toxic, and need to get rid of it. And then close that door, shut the door. So good question.
Yeah, thanks, Dave. I want to add on to that. There's a protocol that we go over on disposing of, extract whatever's extracted, and on, how we protect ourselves afterwards. I usually shower immediately, like within 5 minutes after I say goodbye to my client. I'm going to take a shower. I'm going to rinse off, because not only internally, as Dave was explaining about, if you could take something on, if you're extracting in that way, externally through the energy field, we are empathic and we're resonant with people around us. And so while we've summoned our power and our energy body is expanded and full, we want to make sure that we rinse off and take a shower before our energy body contracts back down, because as it contracts back down, it will pull whatever energetic debris is in it closer to us. So we want to make sure that our power is still raised and our energy body is still expanded when we get into that shower and cleanse ourselves off or jump in the ocean. And then usually salt water is a great place to put the extractions, the intrusions that are pulled out. When I have a bowl with salt water that I keep under the table when I do session work, and it all goes in that bowl. And then I have a way to dispose of that afterwards. There's a particular corner of my yard which gets all that stuff where the weeds try to grow. And you know what? The weeds aren't growing there anymore. It does its job, right? So yeah, thanks. And Dave, you were talking a little bit about extraction tools, or you were about to talk about extraction tools. But I was just wondering before you get to that, with feather wands, when you're crafting the feather wands, are you usually using a full wing, or are you using individual feathers, both? And kind of what goes into that process for you, that creative process when you're actually making the feather wand? Just share a little bit about your own personal process of, if you're making a wand for somebody, you might be looking at multiple different feathers, multiple different wings. And then there's at some point where you make a decision of this one goes to that person, right? So just share a little bit about how that works for you. Um,
Okay, well, each one is different, and in making a fan, like we'll say a fan, it could either your wand could be as simple as a single feather, usually of a bird of prey. These items are hard to get. They're not easily attainable. So to use a full wing, when we can, we'll use that for sun dancing, and for, like, I have a wing that I use for like big stuff, the big stuff. But oftentimes I'll make a fan with maybe 3 feathers, and I just did one for a lady that works very closely with raven and crow. So her fan, it needed to be made with the feathers of the raven and the crow, and others that I incorporate a feather from a different bird, depending on where your power is coming from. But all birds, they're all sacred, and feeling that, and tapping into the energy of and the medicine of the feather, which helps to carry our prayers on the smoke of the sage to the Creator. It's really up to the person. If you need like a full wing or tail feathers, or just a few feathers, and it can just be one feather that you use. But typically, I think 3 or 4 feathers, or up to 7, depending on. I mean, everyone's different. Every doctor is different, and they use maybe a little different tool that works for you. So each and every one is a little different. And generally, I will, if I'm making one for somebody, it's knowing where their connection is, and numbers, and the type of bird that we're looking. It might be, one thing that I'm working on now is from the we call it like a buzzard or a vulture, turkey vulture. Their heads are not pretty, but they're very, very powerful. And so making a fan with the wing of the vulture, and then maybe using adding other feathers that hang off the handle of a bird of prey, maybe an owl or a hawk, something like that. Asking them all to be a part of that. But it really is up to the individual. If they're looking for tails, wing, it is our belief that the spirit of that animal, Lakota, are you okay? Lives within each feather. So even the tiniest feather has a lot of power. And they're there to help us. So they don't, hi honey. One of my most sacred fans that I was given is from an elder in the Lakota nation. She's from Rosebud. And years ago, and it's 3 feathers just wrapped up in red, and making a simple handle. Very, very simple. They don't all have to be beaded or extravagant, but I generally like to make a handle with, if it's not of the wing, but to attach it to like an old part of an old growth tree, or wandering up the the beach, the banks of the river, and finding what I'm looking for, and it will come out, it'll just present itself. A piece of wood that is weathered and aged and it has a life to it. That will make a good handle. But again, all of that's very personal. So each practitioner kind of will tell me what they're needing, what they're looking for. But again, any one of the feather or a feather fan or a wand, all used in the same way. So it's just really personal choice of what you're really looking, what you need, and what sometimes a smaller one is a lot easier to travel with. And you have a big wing, there's a responsibility, to keep those feathers oiled up. Use the bird, they naturally excrete oils onto their feathers. So those feathers can get dried out and need to be cared for. And you can take like a little olive oil or something. Oil would take oil off of our face, off of our nose, our forehead, and rub that into the feathers to just give that life again. You can wash your feathers, so just run them under water, and there's that natural oil on them that will shed the water. But when they get too dried out, you need to add a little bit more of that to it. That will just help keep them vital and alive, and not kind of like the drum, like we talked about. A drum gets dehydrated. The feathers can get that way too. So need to care for them and straighten out. If it gets a little wonky, care for it and run your fingers up the spine of the feather, each one, and straighten it back out. So did that answer your question?
It did. Thanks, Dave. Yeah. And I know when I've tried to make my feather wands before, it's been hard for me to attach them to the handle. Like that's been making that secure connection to the handle so that, it can be used in a way. Like I've had success with single feathers before, where I've drilled into, like a piece of redwood and inserted a feather in. But when it comes to using multiple feathers and getting them to line up in the way they are, it seems to stay there for a little while, and then it gets a little helter-skelter.
Yeah. Well, we have like I'll take some cedar and cut out, if it's going to have a 4 or more, an eagle wing is kind of like your hand, and you have the 4 pointer on the tip of the wing, the 4 pointer feathers, and you got that little thumb. And that little feather off the side, you use those 5 primary feathers of the wing, or the first 7, they will fit into, make a handle, and I cut a slit at the top of that cedar deep enough that whole wing can fit down in there. Then holes can be drilled through it and secure it.
Got it. So rather than trying to lash it on with sinew or something, you're actually drilling it in so that there's a like a cleft around it that holds it into place.
Yeah.
Like a notch. Yeah. So you're putting it in a notch, and then the notch holds the wing in place.
Yes. And sometimes it's doing a little hand carving and chiseling out, because the wing or the feathers will have a bit of a bow to it. So if you use just a flat piece of wood, it's hard to get that secure on there. So it's more carving that handle to fit the feathers. So each one is a little different.
Right. That makes a lot of sense, because I had I had a bird that I had found a while back, and I was able to recover the head, the wings, and the tail, and the talons. And my idea was to try and put it all together on one, kind of staff. And then it was hard to get it all secured. It was hard to get the head secured and the talons secured. And so it's still in the to-do project list. Yeah. Great. Yeah. Thanks, Dave. Does anybody else have any questions for Dave right now, or that you'd like to ask that's coming up? Okay, well, why don't you talk a little bit about extraction tools while you have while we have some time?
Okay, well, like I touched on, extraction tools can be anywhere from a bone, use that hollow bone to pull out a dark, something dark. And sometimes you will get blood. You'll see it coming up that, and then you spit it out. That's one. Others will be maybe a claw, a cougar claw or a bear claw, a talon, or a whole foot that you use. That is, you don't see it actually coming out of the body, but you can feel it. You reach in with that and you grab that with that tool, with that claw or an antler. It might be a sharp object, a curved. I like to have it a bit of a curve, if it's an antler tip or a claw, to dig in there, and you dig that out and you can feel it, and it might resist you. It doesn't want to be pulled out, so it's going to resist, and you delicately but firmly you pull that out of there, and then we like swat it out into the water, into the river. We give it back to there's a lot of Mother Earth. Put it back into the earth. She will take care of it, or into the water, like Scott said, and salt water will help to neutralize that. Make it inert, but you cannot touch it. When you pull that out with that claw, don't touch it. You gotta get rid of that. And different tools. Hi, honey. Different tools will be used for different things, but kind of an all-around good tool, I think, is a talon or claws. That you can actually reach in and pull that out, and it takes not just one time, but several times to get in and dig it all out. It might take more than one session or several sessions to go in, and because those things are sneaky and they'll move around the body. So it's anything like that, and some I've seen that have are carved wood. It looks like a weapon. You're going in to attack a dark entity and to grab that and pull it out. So again, a claws, talons, a foot, bones, antler, or even something carved out of wood that you can reach in and pull that out. And you're visualizing it grabbing it. And you're fighting like hell to pull that out and get it all out, and then dispose of that. So it's, again, each healer is going to have their own tool that feels good for you, that works good for you, and something you're connected to. Yeah.
Thanks, Dave. Yeah, and what I found with the, what you mentioned about sometimes you have to go back in is sometimes it comes off in layers too, because it's what the client's able to integrate as a human being, right? If we were able to pull out every place where we were imbalanced simultaneously, it would be very cathartic. We'd have to change a lot of things in our lives right away. And it might be too cathartic. So it's something to bear in mind that as we do work in this space, we do healing work on the shamanic level. It's very deep. And so we don't want to go too deep, right? If we go too deep, sometimes people come and I want to fix everything, but you can't actually do that all in one go. Because if we were to do it all in one go, it would be so cathartic. It would be very hard to integrate. It would be almost impossible for somebody to integrate all of that healing at one time, all that new information at one time. And so we have to be mindful of, okay, that's enough for now. No, we didn't necessarily get it all in one session, but we got enough, and we come to a stopping point that is enough for that person. And then, you know, what I emphasize a lot in our advanced class and also in the intermediate class as well is that we don't want to just remove. We have to replace and fill with light when we're done. Because if we just remove, then we leave a void, and the next dark or negative thing can enter into that space. So it's really important when we do extraction work, whether it's distance or in person, that we fill that back up. And for me, that always feels like soul retrieval when we do that, what we call soul retrieval. And I've seen, now I don't know if if you've seen tools like that, Dave, or you use tools like that, but I've seen soul catchers actually in a museum where the shaman would hold the soul catcher, and then while they're journeying, use it to scoop up the lost life force energy that dissociated a trauma. And then it was usually like a two-handed tube, a tube with openings on either end and carved. And then they, you know, scoop up the soul on that end, the life force energy that was lost, come back and blow it back into the person who is receiving the healing.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about that and what your experience with that?
Yeah, I've seen the soul catchers here in the Northwest Coast. They have elaborate soul catchers that have like you know, maybe 5 or 6 inches long, with maybe a wolf head on one end or both ends, or a killer whale, orca whale, and using that to catch negative, and they spit that out. But then, yes, they'll blow in love and light, and you like Scott, very important, and I'm glad you brought that up, is replacing the void and blowing in love and light. And then you have to allow time to heal. So it's like with any surgery. My daughter went through surgery. It's been a stage 1, stage 2, stage 3. Can't do it all at once. We do the first step, and then let the healing process happen and heal, and then go in and do the next stage. But when you take out, like, say you pull out a bad tooth, you have to put something in that to replace that hole, and heal it. Put some medicine in that, or it's open. You're open for infection, and it's kind of the same way energetically. You pull something out and you left that space. You don't want it to get infected, so you push in the love and light of the Creator, of the Spirit, to fill that hole, to heal, and blowing that back in. So there's some really cool spirit soul catchers, but it's also a tool to put that medicine back in, and very important with that. I don't have one like that, but I really admire the coastal tribes out here that use those, and they're elaborately carved and they're so beautiful. And using that at the end to blow that into wherever, maybe a chakra, and blowing that love and light and health and help and healing into that spot. Yeah, really important. Good stuff to talk about here.
Yeah, thanks, Dave. Yeah, and so, you know, we've covered a number of different medicine objects: the drum, the rattle, the feather fan, extraction tools, and the soul catcher. And I think it's important to share for those of you who haven't gone through the full training with us, or who are, if you're just starting out in your practice, that you will use all of them in one session, generally, not always, but it's, when somebody comes into me for a session, we meet and greet, we say hello. Within the first minute or two, I have my smudge bowl going with the sage, and I've got my feather fan, and I'm giving them a nice, thorough smudging. I'm clearing them in the front, the back, above the crown, below the feet, and further out, in their energy field as well, about 3 to 5 feet out. So I'm creating that nice, I'm clearing out all the static, right? We live day by day in a world that's filled with static, or if you were a Frank Zappa fan, you might know cosmic debris. Okay, there's a lot of just debris, energetic debris that is out there in the world. And we don't want to have that noise interfere with the signal that we need to pick up in the session. So just like if you have a microphone that's feeding back, your sound isn't going to be very good no matter what you're playing as a musician, right? You've got to get rid of that static. You've got to get rid of that noise. And so that's what we do first with the smudging and the feather wand. Okay. And then I'll start to talk to people, and maybe I'll do some energy healing work with them. And as I'm doing that, sometimes just through the energy healing, just by, doing the energy work, things will start to arise. And I might go right back to my feather wand and my smudge bowl and then just smudge it right out of the way as it's rising up, whether it's from the solar plexus or an organ or just in the heart or any area, right? We just clear it out. And then you might, in a session, even before you start with the shamanic drumming, at least for me, because I'm doing the energy healing first, I might find a pinpointed area where there's something deeper that isn't going to get cleared just with sage and feathers. And I'll feel into that area, and that's when I'll go get my extraction tool. And so I have a tool that I use that Dave actually gave me, which is a projectile point from his tribe, and it's on a bone, and we use that to pull out, to kind of create and carve it's like a knife, right? And then you're able to cut out that which doesn't belong. And then I pull that out and I throw that into my bowl of salt water. And it's usually not just one little carve. There's usually, multiple attempts before I get the whole thing out. And sometimes I don't even get it all out at that time. And so then we will continue with that, and I'll get the smudge and smudge it out afterwards to make sure none of that debris sticks. And then I might continue to move up all the way up to the crown to clear other things, because if something is deeply affecting, let's say, the heart or the solar plexus area, there's also going to be a resonant effect happening in the mind. And so oftentimes, if there's something deep that's emotional in the heart space that's cleared, some deep heart trauma, and we clear that with extraction, and then we smudge and get that out of the way, we come up to the head, and there's a lot of thoughts happening, because we don't just experience trauma and have emotions about it, we also think about those emotions, right? There's two separate things that are happening, right? It's like, oh, I kicked my toe and I broke my toe, and I feel whatever my emotion is about that. And then afterwards, I might start judging myself and thinking about why I did that. So they're two separate parts. And so then we smudge that out of the way too. And then I get my drum. And then I start doing my journeying and my drumming. And in that, I will check again to see if I got it all with the physical extraction. And sometimes my spirit helpers will come in and do the remainder of the extraction in the journey work. Right. And then when that's complete in the session, and we go through, all the other parts, then the soul parts come back. Now, I don't usually use a soul catcher, but for me, I've actually put soul parts in a bag, in like a little leather pouch that when I get them, I put them in there, and then I bring them back and I blow them in that way. That's just how I do it. But everyone does it differently. There's no right or wrong dogma about it. You just have a way that you do it. Okay. And then when it's all finished and when the session is done, I come back and I use my rattle, and I rattle all around the client. And I usually rattle for 5 or 10 minutes to seal them in. So it's closing the doorway like we spoke earlier. It's also protecting and sealing them in so that when they go out into the world, they're not so raw, right? When we come into a session, it's a safe space. It's supposed to be a safe space. Okay, so it's important to me that I create a safe space for my clients in sessions. And in that safe space, it's safe to be vulnerable, right? We want to create that atmosphere of safety, that container where the person can be vulnerable and heal and speak about the deep things that have been plaguing us for sometimes decades. And maybe we don't have anyone that we feel like we can talk to. And maybe we tried to talk to somebody about it 10 years ago, a professional, and they didn't understand, or we felt misunderstood and it wasn't safe, or we tried to share it with a partner or a relative or a close friend and they didn't quite hear it or feel it. And we said, well, no, I'm not going to try and do that again. So this is the type of thing that as a practitioner, you're holding space for that. Those are the people, this is what people will bring you when they come into your office, when they come into your healing space. And that's the service that's so important that is being provided. That's because it's those old traumas which allow those negative spirits to stay within the person. And it also attracts, it has its own magnetism. And so it attracts additional negative energy and negative emotions kind of magnetize and stick to that. And as that happens, then that eventually can grow into physical disease or emotional disease, right? So when we're taking this out, this is what nips that in the bud. And even if it has already started to manifest as physical disease, sometimes when we remove that spiritual aspect of it, that gives the body the chance to heal, and the immune system can then correct the physical disease. And so it's very important when we create that safe space for someone who's sharing so deeply that we don't just shove them back out in the world and say, okay, you're done. That's kind of like not filling it up with light afterwards. You leave this big empty hole. Well, you leave a big empty hole around the person. You have to recreate that container, that sacred space, that energetic space, that container around the person so that they can walk back out in the world in a way that is safe for them while they're still integrating and processing the session. Okay, so you can see that in one session, I will use all 5 of those tools, right? The drum, the rattle, the feather wand, the extraction tool, and the soul catcher. I'll also sometimes use a different kind of rattle. So the rattle I use for sealing up is one thing, but I have another rattle that's like a sharper rattle, not the type that Dave is describing, where it's a hide or a skin filled with sand or rock, but this is more of like a things jangling, like wood that's put together on a shaker. It's more like a shaker than a rattle, and that's a lot sharper. So like that shaker sound is really like crack, 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 whereas a rattle is like this is a sharper sound. So that sharp sound, that crack, 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 that can be used for breaking up densities, right? If I can't get it to move with the extraction tool, or I can't get it to move another way, I'll use that like crack, 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 and it will just kind of like jangle everything and break it all up. And it's like breaking up mud or breaking up ice and bringing that up to the surface. From then it can be cleared with something else, like with the feather wand and the smudge. Okay, so that's another thing that we can use. And then also sometimes I'll use a didgeridoo, and with the didgeridoo, that will, or the adaki as it was called, right? That resonance at a distance is also really good for breaking up hard solidified intrusions. And it's also really good if you're dealing with somebody who has deep emotional trauma around physical touch, because you're at a distance, right? You're 3 feet away, the Didge is long, right? And then you can hover that, 6 inches over the person. So you can still clear it without being so much into the person's physical space, right? And so that's another thing to be aware of when we're working as practitioners, that we can work at a little bit of a distance by using a tool like the Didge or the Yadaki, and that allows it to kind of blow off anything that is there that's stuck, that the person might not feel so comfortable with us being there with a feather or with an extraction tool or a rattle or something like that. Okay. And then also at the very end of my sessions, I use my flute, because for me, the flute just kind of, after I've sealed everything up, I want to bring people back into present time, into here now, in a calming way. So I'll use a flute, and I'll just play the flute a little bit to help them come ground in. A lot of people use the singing bowls for that, right? They'll use the singing bowls, and they'll use the bowls to bring people back. And it's a really nice way to help people transition. And, I just say, oh, welcome home, welcome back to your body, your new body. So that's something to bear in mind, is that we use a lot of these tools at once, and we acquire them over time. As Dave was saying, it's what feels right to you. So as an individual, you might be drawn to a specific feather or a specific piece of wood or a specific skin or whatever that you want to incorporate within your medicine. So that's all important things to think about.
Yeah, and thanks for bringing that up, Scott, because I thought, there's, like, I too have different rattles, and there's a rattle I'll use that just has, it's a stick with deer toes, the deer hooves on it, and they're just attached, and it's a sharper sound. And oftentimes I'll use that one over a person's body, and it will guide me. It might be like something's in their kidney, or it's going up behind their neck, there's something up there, and it will lead me to where there's a deposit of something dark, toxic, and that fan or that rattle will help me do that. And then at the end, use the other rattle. It's a softer, like a rain stick. It sounds like a gentle rain. It's more like a healing, and to close up the wound. And the flute, I use a flute as well at the end, just like a singing bowl. Other people have different, maybe a stringed instrument, something just peaceful, and to bring, like, you're exhaling, like, okay, it's all good now. We're bringing good and balance back in. And for me, it's a flute. And you don't have to really be a good flute player, just a nice sound, like a bird singing. But we also use a pipe we call, the sacred pipe. And it's made, the bowl is made from stone, from Mother Earth, and the stem is made from wood, a tree that they grow up and they reach toward the sky. So when we take that pipe, and you hold the bowl in one hand and the stem in the other, and you insert the stem into the bowl. That's like Father Sky and Mother Earth coming together, and you are connecting, like, the powers of the universe within that pipe. It's not a pipe to be smoked. We fill it with tobacco, which is a sacred medicine, but you don't inhale it. That smoke is we'll use that smoke, pull it into our mouth, and blow that onto the person, or blow that medicine into them from the pipe. And again, just you're pulling in all the powers of the universe, Father Sky and Mother Earth and everything in between, and you're giving thanks with that tobacco. And the spirits like tobacco, they tell us. So you don't inhale, it's not to go in your lungs, into your mouth, and then blowing that smoke into that area where you have extracted. So you're putting kind of like the powers of the universe into that. So there's all kinds of tools, you know, that we have. You could have a dozen different tools, and using, like Scott said, maybe 6 or 7 of them in one session, not just the drum and the rattle or a fan, but using all of them and different ones. So it's kind of like you know, you have your medicine bag, your a bundle, a medicine bundle, and within that bundle, I have all of my things that I may need. And a pipe is one of those that we use. Not everybody uses that, and you don't have to, but that's our way. So that's just another tool we use, is the pipe.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks, Dave, for sharing that about the pipe. And when you say that, I see that, you know, I don't use a pipe, but I can see as you're sharing that, the way that works, as far as you have somebody who is needing healing and they're not able to summon that life force energy for themselves. And so you're acting on their behalf to summon that power of the universe, Mother Earth and Father Sky, and to then give that to them through the smoke. So that, because they're not able to at that time, they're injured, so they're not able to summon that for themselves at that point in time. Yeah, so that's great.
Yeah.
I have one other question, and I want to open it up to other people for questions as well, which is, and actually a comment before that. So, you know, because we do use so many tools, generally, you know, the healing space, the studio that's set up, it can look a little eclectic, right? For those of you who have been here, you know, Willie, you've been here, Melanie jumped off. You go into you know, our healing studio space, and there is you know, feathers hanging everywhere, and you know, drums on the wall, and a number of rattles, you know, all sorts of stuff hanging around there, and that's typical. That's normal. So, you know, make sure when you set your space up, you give yourself enough space to have everything that you need right there. You know, the last thing you want to do is leave the client on the table and go, hold on, I got to run up to the house and go grab something. You don't want to do that in the middle. That's an empty feeling for the person on the table when that happens. And Dave, I have a question. Do you traditionally ever use crystals in? Is that part of the tradition or no?
Yeah, crystals, and actually, well, crystals, yes. Not just crystals. Stones. Stones are the we say eon. They are the oldest. They are the oldest spirit. And so when we use the stones, like for a sweat lodge, you take these rocks and you heat them up. It wakes them up. You're awakening that spirit, and they become red hot. And that just looks like a river rock. You know, nothing special. It's just a stone. It's nothing is just a branch. Nothing is just a rock. Now crystals are another. That's another level. And I think science knows that. I mean, there's crystals. Yeah, I have crystals around me. I wear one in my medicine bag. And I know other traditional healers that use crystals in their work directly, using a crystal as an extraction tool, a sharp crystal, and using that to go in and cut something out using the crystals. So, the stones are very important. So yes, crystals, but I also have rocks that are I just know they're. You may look at it and say, "Oh, it's just looks like a piece of gravel." I'm like, "Well, it's very strong, and I have that inside my pipe bag, or one that is just naturally very round, like the earth, and I keep that in my medicine bundle. I always have a stone or a crystal, or several in my bundle, because they're the oldest and they've been around longer than we have. So I can talk to the stones, and the stones will speak to us, and they're there to help us. The stones are very, very important tools that we use as well. Yeah, and I can oftentimes we'll use a stone to pull something out and give it to that stone, and then I take it up to the river or to the beach, and we give that stone back, put it back into the ocean, into the river, and the running water will cleanse that stone, but that's disposing of it. We'll give it to the rock, and the rock will take care of it. Or a crystal, but most folks have a beautiful crystal. You don't want to just throw it into the river, you want to use that. So you take the crystal and you cleanse it in the water. You let the running water rush over it and clear it and cleanse it. And if you don't have a creek by you, your faucet, running water, use running water to clear it, the stones. So we use the stone as something to hold that and dispose of it through the stone.
Yeah, thanks, Dave. Thank you for that. Okay, does anybody have any questions they'd like to ask Dave? Anything they'd like to bring to the forefront now? Yeah, go ahead, Christy.
It's really interesting because I noticed that over the last couple of years, I collected a whole lot of things, and I didn't actually know why I was collecting them until I was doing your course, Scott. And then I was like, oh, that's what that beautiful feather fan that's connected to a crystal, that's what I use the feather fan for. And same, I found this beautiful rattle shaker. It's actually made out of coconut husk. It was in a trade aid store. And I was like, it's got a beautiful carving on the top. And I was like, oh, now I know that's what I'm using that for. So all of these, it's like, your intuition and guidance, because we don't have a Dave over here in New Zealand to get these beautiful tools from, but somehow they've all just land with you. You're guided. Also, I was asked to have by my helpers some turquoise, and when I was in Maui a couple of years ago when we could travel, I found this beautiful piece of turquoise that I was just really attracted to in this random shop and brought it home, and so then I was like, oh, I've got this particular crystal that I need to use in my work. So it's really interesting how those come to you.
Things just show up.
Yeah.
They just show up and they're like, okay. Yeah.
They'll find you.
It's
they will find you.
Yeah. They find you. They do.
They find you. Yes. Yeah.
And
that's beautiful.
And they talk to you. Right. Yeah, great.
And the turquoise, I like that you mentioned turquoise, because that is a very, very sacred stone, very powerful stone. And I don't know, the obsidian is also very good. We call them Apache tier. They're obsidian, but they've been worn, they're like polished. They're smooth. They're not like a broken piece of obsidian. And they look black, but when you hold it up to the light, you can see it's kind of like I don't know if it's some form of an agate, but you can see light through it. And we use those a lot. Again, I just love that. They will find you. You could be in the most obscure place, a little shop, or walking on a trail, and you'll just see it. And you're like, aha, that it will find you. And you're aware, you're seeing it. like I need to use this. It says trusting yourself. Trust yourself. You more than, and you feel more than maybe you give credit for. So trust yourself and trust those helpers. I just think that's great. I've done the same thing. I go into a little, it could be just an obscure shop, and nothing in there speaks to me but one thing. I'm like, this is exactly what I need. I've been looking for that, or it's been waiting for me. It becomes sacred. Wakan. It becomes a sacred item in that connection that you've just had with it. Isn't that beautiful? It's so simple. Sometimes it's just if you ask and you need something, it will come. It's really that simple. Ask for what you need, and then be aware. Watch, because it will come. And you don't want to miss it when it presents itself. And not always is it going to be exactly what we had in mind. So don't have any prejudice about what it may be, but you'll know it when you see it. And it'll be saying like, I've been waiting for you. I've been waiting for you to come get me. I felt that with crystals. I just run across it and I'm like, it's been waiting for me. And I have walked away from things and I've regretted it. And when I have that regret, I'll think, okay, is this more, or is this, and I'll have that, you will regret it. And it won't be lost. Something else will come my way. But this was presented to me. And if I don't pick it up now, I will regret not doing that and taking that moment to do that. Maybe you'll figure out where it needs to fit in down the road. But add it to your medicine bundle. It's medicine. They're given to you, so it's just so beautiful how easy this works sometimes, because the spirits really want us to live free and be happy, and they want to help us. So they'll put things in front of us all the time. Just keep your eyes open, your ears open, your heart open, your spirit open for that. And I love that.
Thanks, Dave. And when you were sharing that about how things just come to you, I was remembering an experience I had about 25 years ago when I was living in northern Arizona, and I was out in the high desert in this real red sand, red clay area, and I was just, nobody around, and I'm playing my drum and I'm drumming and I'm doing some ceremony and journey work out there, and I'm dancing around, and I'm on this big open plateau, and everything looks the same. It all is just like red clay, and you know how it kind of fractures off in flat, thin pieces, right? In that part of the desert. And I drum, and I must have drummed for about 45 minutes, and I stopped, and I was just called, and it was a plain where there was, it's like a plateau. There's not a lot of landmarks on it unless you're talking about individual bushes, right? And I just stopped, and there isn't even a lot of vegetation. I stopped in the middle of this plateau, and I looked down, and directly in between my feet is a pottery shard with Kokopelli on it. And there was no other, I didn't see any other pottery shards in the whole area. I wasn't looking. It was like, all of a sudden I just got called to stop my drumming. And it was like, I just got the signal, okay, you're done, stop. And I stopped, and I put down my drum, and there it was in between, like literally underneath my feet right there. And it was like, wow, I guess this is supposed to come with me.
Yeah.
So yeah, thanks for talking about that. Does anybody else have anything they'd like to share? Any questions that they'd like to ask that come up? Okay. Well, thanks, Dave. Thank you so much for taking the time away from Lakota to share with us and to be with us today. That's really meaningful to me that you were willing to take the time from your family to share with everybody. I appreciate that. For those of you who are interested, we're going to be doing a retreat here in September, the 25th to the 30th of September with Dave. And we're going to be making some of these items that we've spoken about: drums, feather wands, feather fans, extraction tools, rattles, and anything else that comes to mind. We'll see if other things come to mind. And Dave, you've been collecting some materials for that for a couple of years, and so it'll be interesting to see how the checked luggage goes.
I may send things ahead of time.
Yeah, okay, that's fine too. Yeah, you should do that.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting to see what they think about you in the airport coming through with all that stuff. And then also,
they've questioned me before.
Have they?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I'm sure. Well, yeah, and then going to powwows and stuff, I'm sure, with all the things that you have brought before. So yeah.
Yep. They'll pull something out of the suitcase and like, what is this? It's sacred. Don't touch it. They put it back, you know. They really, TSA, I found that they really do have a lot of respect for things like this. So not too worried about that, but I do have if there's anybody that is interested in coming and really has questions or an idea in your head that of what you see, let us know ahead of time, so I can be sure to bring what I can, you know, that I think this is what you're needing or what you're asking for. So if anyone has anything specific, just communicate that, you know. Just tell us what you're looking for, what you're needing, or what you see, what your vision is, and how to do this. And our purpose is to make that happen for you, you know, to get all the things that you will need. Because again, the work that you're doing, I cannot underestimate or not underestimate. What's my word? I cannot overemphasize how important the work is that you're doing. We are in a time of change, and it's good, but change is a struggle. So just let us know what you need, and Scott and I are here to help in any way we can.
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks for saying that. Absolutely. Anybody who, if you have a vision in advance of what you'd like to make, definitely let us know in advance, as much as advance as possible, actually, because if it's not already in the supply kit, it can be, Dave can do his best to get that. Yeah. Anybody else have anything they'd like to share before we call it a day? Great. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for taking the time to be here, and thank you for taking the time to participate with us. Dave, thank you again for taking the time out of your, family.
Oh, I apologize. I couldn't log on. I'm kind of up in the hills, and it wouldn't connect. And I thought, oh my gosh. So we drove to the other side of the property, and boom, I got it's kind of the nature of the beast up here sometimes. So thank you for your patience in waiting for me to, my phone was finding you somewhere, but we're surrounded in big trees up here, and I wasn't getting a reception. So thank you for being patient with me, and Creator made it happen. Got it all hooked up when we were supposed to. So very great. Thank you.
All perfect. Thanks, everybody.
Miigwech.
Miigwech.